Hello and I welcome you to my video classes on water governance and water policy. So in this video we are mainly discussing about irrigation management transfer, policies and activities. Myself Vishwanath Avati, and we will see that today's discussion mainly is related to introduction, components and requirement of key dimensions for a proper transfer of policies and activities. So here first we have to understand what to mean by irrigation management transfer. What do you mean by irrigation management transfer? It refers to the transfer of management responsibilities for an irrigation system from government agency to user organizations or local bodies or to non-government organizations. Right, here it is what the irrigation management transfer is mainly related to transfer of management responsibilities of an irrigation system from government agency to water user organizations or local bodies like a village panchayat and even for NGOs. Right, it is what transferring the responsibilities with a legal form. So, irrigation management transfer is currently a major concern in a number of countries. The transfer, it is a system, it is one of the management system. This system has a concern in many countries. Mainly, it is what in a particular it is seen as a way to reduce the pressure. It is what to reduce the pressure. But what kind of the pressures? The pressure is mainly related to financial burden and even to improve the agriculture production, right? And mainly it is what related to sustainable development, long term sustainable for irrigation system. Main for keywords are it is what mainly concern in many countries and mainly related to reduce the pressure, right, on a government. Mainly it is a financial burden as well as improve the agriculture production, right, and even make the sustainable developmental activities or sustainability in a irrigation system, right? So then several countries notably India, Philippines, Indonesia, China, Sri Lanka of Asian countries, Mexico of Latin America, New Zealand have made major effort towards the irrigation management transfer. If you see in these countries, they had made some work related to irrigation management transfer policy and activities. These programs differ from each other in a many ways. So if you see the method and process, it is differ from one place to another place. In India it may be different, in Philippines it is maybe different, or maybe it is in a different way in a New Zealand. Why? Because they will take their importance based on the requirement, their people requirement, their availability of water resource, as well as the condition of society, culture. That's what it will differ from one place to another place. So however, for this reason, it would be useful to develop a irrigation management transfer policy and activities. Right, in particular area we have to develop irrigation management transfer policy and activities to particular areas to avoid the confusion and to give a standard in a national level. Next we have the components, right? Components. So here mainly we have a components related to transfer, mainly components related to policies and activities. So now we will discuss about mainly irrigation management activities. What kind of different activities are involved in irrigation management activities? For example, if you want to make a irrigation, so irrigation means what? Artificial supply of water to the crop. So here when we are supplying the water to crop, then different activity has to be carried out, right? So those activities are involved in irrigation management activities. Now we will see what kind of activities are involved. So an irrigation system is a system of physical structure such as dam, canal, gate, pumps. See here it is what some structures are required to make the activities. What kind of structures are required? Dam is required to store the water, and to distribute the water canal is required, and gates are required to regulate the water, and even pumps are required to lift the water, right? So that is what related to structural physical structure of the irrigation activities, right? So then we have, if you see the some of the work related to work related to irrigation management is, one is water distribution. By the name only we can understand what you mean by distribution, right? So we know water distribution. Water distribution means what? We have to collect the water, and collected water has to be distributed with the help of canals, right? So next activity is maintenance activity. So maintenance activities means what? Repairing, right? And maintaining the structures from the damages, from the crack, and even for silt deposition. All are comes under the maintenance of the structures. Next we have resource mobilization. Resource mobilization means what? For distribution of water and as well as for maintenance we require many resources, right? So many resources means manpower we required, and we require vehicles we required, and even we require electricity. These all comes under the mobilization of resource means one from one place to another place we have to make the resource mobilization to carry out the water distribution as well as the maintenance activities, right? So next we have the activity related to irrigation management activity, conflict resolution, right? Here it is what we have to there will be some problem between the people, right? Maybe it is mainly related to water use, right? Water users, and here we have to make some activities like solving the problem and discussing different problems and find outing the mistakes where we are making the mistake, and what is the main reason for conflict, and how to solve. All these are required related to conflict solving. Next we will go for component, and the next component is mainly related to irrigation management policy. So earlier it was activity, now we have policies, right? So the policy mainly related to government policies. So policy means what? Government will make rules and regulations. Why they make rules and regulation? Mainly the intention is carry out the function properly, and it may be in a different form. So one is maybe in a statement in a law, written policy statements, government agency regulations, guidelines. So we have a very many guidelines like a health guidelines, right? And we have a rules and regulations of any department, and even we have some written statement as well as law statements. It is all called under, it will come under all under policies. So policy means mainly related to rules and regulations, terms and conditions. Who is a legal user, who is an illegal user, who have a right, all comes under the policies, right? And mainly it is related to activities. Actually they are each they are dependent each other. Why? Because the activities are required. To carry out the activities, the proper rules and regulations are required. Why? Because we cannot do our own activities by our own and own method. There will be a procedure. According to the procedure only we have to carry out, right? So to tell the procedure and rules and regulation, who has to carry out, who is the responsible for that, and if is there any event mistake, then who is the responsible for mistakes, who has to pay, all the rules and regulations are required, right? It is mainly related to activities, right? So if you see the some rules and regulations, right, related to activity, one is water distribution rules. Why? Because water distribution activity is required. To carry out the water distribution activity, then rules are required, right? So it is mainly related to distribution of irrigation water to users, right? Mainly it is related to allocation rules or water rights. Mainly it is related to allocation rules and water right. Next is the resource mobilization rules, right? So earlier we have activity of resource mobilization. To carry out the resource mobilization, then how to carry out that all activity, there should be a rules and regulations, right? So that includes, right, including requirement for payment of irrigation fees and for labor charges. If you are making some work, then how to pay them their wages, right? And even to collect the fees from others also. Next we have conflict solving rules, right? Here it is what we have to solve the problem. Then here also there should be proper rules and regulation. For example, is there any problem, then who is responsible to carry out the conflict? Because there will be a complaint and we have to take the feedback, and even we have to ask the some problems, then we have to discuss. But who will be responsible? That kind of regulations will be there for related to conflict solving the. Next we have system managers. So system managers means what? to manage the entire system, right? So here managers are required. So manage system managers, mainly it is related to, maybe it is a person or maybe it is an organization, but what is the main intention? He has to manage the system of operation and as well as the maintenance, right? Next we have component is related to irrigation management transfer. Here it is what? Irrigation management transfer. So if you see the irrigation management transfer, once again I will repeat, it is what? The transfer of responsibility of some. It may be some responsibilities or all irrigation management responsibilities. All irrigation management responsibilities of an irrigation system, right, from government agency to one or more private or local person or organizations, right? I'll repeat, it is mainly related to transfer of responsibilities of irrigation management like a canal management, water use, that should be transferred from government agencies like a government department to local water users or local organizations or NGOs, right, to reduce the pressure on the government, right? So that is mainly related to transfer the responsibilities, and I told it may be limited to specific part or specific management functions. Mainly it is related to, you may transfer the specific management functions or limited specific part of the work, right? So next we have here also, if you see the management irrigation management transfer, here the proper specific key element, so specific key element of changes to accomplish it. So here for example, now what we are making transfer of management from government to private organizations, but here what we have old rules and regulation that has to be changed for a new development. New development means what? We are going from private, like no, almost a public private partnership, public private partnership. So here public means what? Government. Private means it is what? Private organizations. And partnership, right? It is what? So we have to change earlier method of social method. Social means public, mainly it is government rules. So now we have to change the rules and regulation. That element should be mentioned here, and we were discussing those kind of elements in upcoming slides, right? And here also what exactly we are making, right? For example, if we take the activities, transfer activities, why we are making activity transfer? Because we have a new policies, and to make the implementation of new policies, then some activity has to be conducted. So that activity has to be conducted with the help of different with the help of policy. So policy has to be changed. According to policies we have to make the activities. Next, some experiment has to be carried out, means it is a continuous monitoring and evaluation. Continuous monitoring and evaluation. Why? Because there is no any blueprint. So because it depends on different factors based on locality, based on the climatic condition. That's what we have to make continuous experiment, and after experiment we have to make a best solution how to carry out the irrigation management transfer. We'll go for next, need of key dimensions. Key dimensions means what? Some requirement. So requirement for irrigation management transfer policies and activities. So when you are transferring from government agency to private agency, then there should be some questions will be there and some problem will be there. To solve those kind of problems and their requirement, some 7 key points are mentioned here, and you have to fulfill these 7 points. When you are fulfilling these 7 points, then we can carry out easily transfer of responsibilities. So one by one we will discuss. First one is mainly related to, we have to properly define, right? We have to define of the person or organization to which the responsibilities are to be transferred. Here it is what? We have to define properly to whom. Maybe it is a person or maybe it is an organization, and who is eligible to transfer responsibilities. Next is related to the responsibility to be transferred from the government agency to private agencies, right? So here it is what? We are transferring from government to private. It is a core meaning of this topic, but how to carry out this, right? It is not so easy because we have a many gaps between management, right? So here it is very difficult, and here also proper procedure has to be carried out, and this should be legalized, it should not be illegal, right? It should not be under the corruption. That's what we have to define, and we have to explain how to transfer from government agency to private persons. Next is the right and powers. It is mainly related to the right and powers. Power means authority, particularly those over water distribution, mainly related to water distribution in a broader sense to be transferred. So here also the powers also, we have engineers, so he is an engineer, is responsible for distribution of water, but now engineer will not come here. Here will come some of the leaders of water user associations. So here even for association we have to transfer the power and right. We know what you mean by power of the officers. That power also has to be transferred to water user associations or any person. Next, we have change in the system and requirement for resource mobilization for the government agencies. Now here it is was, maybe it is a public and private partnership, means some initial requirement of government agencies also required, or agency requirement is also there, but here now not same as the old method. Now we have to make changes. So what kind of resource mobilizations are required in a government agency, and that has to be specified, and even it has to be specified change in systems and requirements for resource mobilization for the private persons or organizations. Here whatever I said, it is for government agencies. Now even there should be a proper explanation about how resource mobilization has to be carried out through private organizations, right? That change in the system also has to be specified. Next is change in conflict resolving institution, right? So it is what mainly related to change in conflict. So conflict means problem, right? So that we have to solve that problem, right? And it has to be carried out by institute. So here it is mainly related to the problem has to be solved. So to solve the problem, there will be a complaint. Then the complaint has to be taken in some institute. Instead of centralized institution, we have to make localized institution. Even we have to transfer the complaint, is issuing the complaint from a government agency to private agencies, and they will take decision and they will solve the problem, right? So that has to be made, and that has to be mentioned. Here next is the mean by which irrigation management transfer to be implemented. So it is mainly related to implementation, how to make the implementation, right? Here it is what we have specified, who has to who is eligible to, and who is eligible to get the responsibilities, and as well as how to transfer from government to private agencies, and even we are transferring the rights and as well as the power to government to non-government, and even we are telling how resource mobilizations are required for government agency, how resource mobilization from government or private organizations, and even solving the problems. But how to implement this on the ground, right? So to implement on the ground, even it requires some initiations. So initiations, like we have to encourage the water users to make the form, to make the organization or to make the group, and they has to take the responsibilities. Maybe we have to make incentivization of water user associations, right? By increasing, maybe it is with a reward, right? It is maybe with a small rules and regulations, not very rigid rules and regulations. We have to make some flexible rules and regulations related to transforming the responsibilities from government organization to private organizations. For detailed studies, if you want to study in detail, you can refer this, right? It is what type of irrigation management transfer in India, right? If you use this website, or if you use this link, you will get this PDF, and from this we can get in detail how we are carrying out in India, right? So thank you for watching this video.